Admiral Lee Daho stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Alpha. His eyes were fixed on the massive screen showing the empty space beyond Pluto. For 3 days, his sensors had been picking up strange signals. Now he knew what they meant. "Sir, we have visual contact," said Lieutenant Park So-min from her station. Her voice was steady, but Lee could hear the fear underneath. "The Corvani fleet is entering our solar system." Lee had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. Ever since first contact with the Corvani Empire, he knew this day would come. The aliens had made their intentions clear. Earth was to be conquered. Humans were to become slaves or die. How many ships? Lee asked, though he already suspected the answer would be bad. "Counting now, sir," Park replied. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Sir, I count 9,800 ships, maybe more." The command center fell silent. Lee felt his stomach drop. Intelligence reports had suggested the Corvani might send 2,000 ships at most. This was 5 times larger than Earth's worst-case planning. "Are you certain?" Lee asked. "Yes, sir. 9,897 ships confirmed. Still more coming through the jump point." Lee turned to face his command staff. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers. They knew the odds. Earth's entire defense fleet numbered only 300 ships. The orbital platforms added another 150 weapon systems. Against nearly 10,000 enemy vessels, it seemed hopeless. But Lee had a secret. Earth had not been idle during the 50 years since first contact. "Signal all stations," Lee commanded. "Execute Defense Plan Omega. Authorization code Prometheus 7. Across the solar system, hidden systems came to life. On the dark side of the moon, Commander Yoon Tae-woo received the signal at Luna Base. He had been waiting in the shadows for 3 years, his base completely hidden from enemy sensors, all units. "This is Luna Base," Yoon spoke into his communicator. "Defense Plan Omega is active. Move to Position 1. Similar signals went out to dozens of hidden bases throughout the solar system. For decades, Earth had been building secret weapons, not just ships but entire asteroid bases disguised as space rocks. Weapon platforms hidden in the rings of Saturn, minefields that looked like ordinary debris. Dr. Kim Jae-sung was in his laboratory deep inside Ceres when the signal came. He had been working on Project Prometheus for 15 years. Now it was time to see if his crazy ideas would actually work. "Computer, activate Prometheus protocol," he said. Around him, machines began to hum with power. Throughout the solar system, other hidden labs received the same command. The Corvani fleet moved forward slowly. Their ships were massive, each one larger than Earth's biggest battleship. The smallest Corvani destroyer was 3 times the size of a human cruiser. Their technology was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's. Admiral Vorth commanded the Corvani fleet from his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Deathbringer. He was confident this would be an easy victory. His intelligence reports showed that humans had primitive weapons and few ships. The conquest of Earth would take maybe 2 days. "Report," Vorth demanded from his second-in-command. "Human fleet detected, Admiral. Approximately 300 vessels. They appear to be moving to intercept us near the 4th planet." Vorth laughed. 300 ships against his armada. It would hardly be a battle. "Signal the fleet," Vorth ordered. "Maintain formation. We will crush their pathetic defense and then bombard their homeworld into submission." But as the Corvani fleet moved deeper into the solar system, things began to happen that their sensors could not explain. Small objects that had appeared to be asteroids suddenly changed course. Debris fields that should have been drifting randomly began moving with purpose. Captain Park So-min was now in her fighter, the experimental Talon 7. She was part of the first wave of human defenders. Her job was to gather intelligence and hit fast targets of opportunity. "All fighters, this is Control," came Lee's voice over her radio. "Remember, we are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to survive. Use every advantage. Make every shot count." Park's fighter was unlike anything the Corvani had seen before. It was small, fast, and packed with weapons that should have been impossible to fit in such a tiny craft. More importantly, it was piloted by someone who had grown up knowing that one day she might have to fight for the survival of her entire species. The first encounter came near Mars. A group of Corvani scouts met a small human patrol. The aliens expected an easy victory. Instead, the human ships fought with desperate fury. When their weapons ran out, they rammed the enemy vessels. When their ships were dying, the crews set off self-destruct charges to take nearby enemies with them. Admiral Vorth watched the battle reports with growing confusion. His scouts were winning, but they were taking much heavier losses than expected. These humans fought like cornered animals. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Vorth commanded. Admiral Lee's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, almost peaceful. "I am Admiral Lee Daho of the Earth Defense Force," Lee said. "You have entered our solar system with hostile intent. You have one chance to leave peacefully." Vorth laughed again. "Human, you are outnumbered 30-1. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Lee smiled slightly. "Admiral, you have made a mistake. You think you came here to conquer Earth. But what you have actually done is enter the largest trap in human history. We have been preparing for you for 50 years. The transmission ended. Vorth stared at the blank screen. Something about the human's confidence bothered him. But it was too late to worry about that now. His fleet was committed. As the Corvani Armada moved past Mars, Admiral Lee gave another order. "All units, this is Alpha Control. Execute Phase 1 of Defense Plan Omega. Weapons free. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." Throughout the solar system, hidden weapons came online. The real battle for Earth was about to begin. The Corvani fleet advanced through the asteroid belt like a steel wave. Admiral Vorth felt confident again. His ships had easily destroyed the human outer defenses. A few patrol boats and some automated sensors had been swept aside without effort. The humans were clearly trying to delay his advance, but it would not work. "Sir, we are detecting some unusual readings from the asteroids ahead," reported his sensor officer. "What kind of readings?" Vorth asked, not really concerned. "Energy signatures, sir, but they are very faint, probably just solar radiation reflecting off metal in the rocks." Vorth nodded. The asteroid belt was full of metal-rich rocks. It made sense that they would show some energy readings. What Vorth did not know was that General Nam Kitai was watching his fleet from inside one of those asteroids. For 30 years, Nam had been converting large asteroids into hidden fortresses. From the outside, they looked like normal space rocks. Inside, they were packed with weapons and crew quarters. "Fleet positions confirmed," Nam reported to his hidden commanders throughout the belt. "We have them exactly where we want them. Prepare for activation sequence." Lieutenant Choi Min-jun was aboard the carrier Indomitable, which was disguised as a large asteroid. His fighter squadron had been waiting in the dark for hours. Around him, other pilots checked their weapons one final time. "Remember," Choi told his pilots over the intercom, "our ships are faster than theirs, but their armor is much stronger. Hit-and-run tactics only. Get in fast, hit hard, get out before they can target you." Engineer Oh Hye-jin was in the control room of her secret factory ship. For years she had been building something the Corvani had never seen before. Thousands of small, smart drones that could work together like a swarm of insects. Each drone was only the size of a small car, but they carried powerful weapons and could think for themselves. "Swarm units 1 through 5,000, prepare for launch," she commanded. Around her ship, hidden bays began to open. The Corvani fleet was now deep in the asteroid belt. Admiral Vorth was growing impatient. This was taking too long. He wanted to reach Earth and finish this war quickly. "Increase speed," he ordered. "I want to be past this belt in 2 hours." That was exactly what General Nam had been waiting for. "All units," Nam broadcast on a secure channel, "execute Hornet's Nest protocol. Show them what happens when you kick a hornet's nest." Throughout the asteroid belt, rocks that had been drifting peacefully for decades suddenly came alive. Massive weapon batteries emerged from hidden bays. Missile launchers that had been disguised as mining equipment swiveled toward the Corvani ships. Most shocking of all, entire asteroids began to move under their own power. The first Corvani ship to die was a destroyer that had moved too close to what looked like a small metal-rich asteroid. The rock suddenly split open, revealing massive particle beam cannons. The destroyer was cut in half before its crew could even send a distress signal. Admiral Vorth watched in horror as his perfect formation began to come apart. Everywhere he looked, asteroids were revealing themselves as weapons platforms or ships. His fleet was not advancing through empty space anymore. They were flying through a maze of hidden enemies. "All ships, combat formation." Vorth shouted, "Return fire on all targets." But the Corvani ships were designed for open space combat. In the tight confines of the asteroid belt, their large size worked against them. They could not maneuver quickly enough to track the human fighters that were now swarming around them like angry bees. Captain Park So-min led her squadron in the first attack run. Her Talon 7 fighter was loaded with new experimental weapons. She dove toward a Corvani cruiser, fired a spread of smart missiles, then twisted away between two asteroids before the enemy could respond. The missiles she had fired were not normal explosives. They were designed by Dr. Kim Jae-sung to burrow through enemy armor and explode inside the ship. The Corvani cruiser shuddered as 12 small explosions tore through its hull from the inside. Direct hit on Target 7, Park reported. Enemy cruiser is venting atmosphere. All around the asteroid belt, similar scenes were playing out. Human fighters appeared from hidden bases, attacked with weapons the Corvani had never seen before, then vanished back into the rocks before retaliation could arrive. Oh Hyejin's drone swarms were causing even more chaos. Thousands of small, fast-moving targets surrounded the larger Corvani ships. Each drone was too small to destroy a big ship by itself, but working together they could overwhelm enemy defenses. Swarm Alpha, focus fire on the enemy flagship's weapon systems. Oh commanded. Swarm Beta, target their engine sections. The drones responded instantly. They moved like a school of fish, dodging enemy fire while concentrating their attacks on weak points. The Corvani had never faced anything like this before. Their weapons were designed to fight large ships, not thousands of tiny targets. Admiral Vorth's flagship was taking heavy damage. His shields were failing under the constant assault from the drone swarms. Worse, his fleet was being torn apart by enemies that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "Damage report," he demanded. "Heavy casualties across the fleet, sir," his aide replied with a shaking voice. "We have lost over 2,000 ships. The asteroids are not asteroids, sir. They are enemy bases. We are surrounded." Vorth could not believe what he was hearing. 2,000 ships lost already. That was more than the humans were supposed to have in their entire fleet. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on the largest asteroid fortresses. We will blow our way through." But even as his ships began to focus their attacks, more surprises awaited. When Corvani weapons hit what they thought were solid asteroids, many of the rocks simply split apart, revealing that they were actually hollow shells protecting smaller, more agile ships inside. Lieutenant Choi led his squadron out of the carrier Indomitable as it shed its rocky disguise. Around him, dozens of other fighter squadrons were launching from similar hidden carriers. "All right, everyone," Choi announced to his pilots. "The big ships have stirred up the hornet's nest. Time to show them what happens when you make humans angry." The battle in the asteroid belt became a nightmare for the Corvani. They were used to fighting enemies who followed the same rules they did. Large ships in formation, fighting at long range with heavy weapons. But the humans fought like pirates and guerrillas. They used every dirty trick they could think of. Human ships rammed Corvani vessels when their weapons ran out. Asteroids that seemed dead suddenly exploded when enemy ships came too close. Fighters attacked in swarms, then vanished into clouds of debris before return fire could find them. General Nam watched the battle from his command asteroid. His tactical display showed Corvani ships burning throughout the belt. The plan was working even better than he had hoped. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "enemy fleet strength is down to approximately 7,000 ships. They are trying to regroup on the far side of the belt." Nam smiled grimly. "Let them regroup. They have no idea what is waiting for them between here and Earth." As Admiral Vorth's battered fleet finally fought its way clear of the asteroid belt, he looked back at the carnage. Behind him, twisted metal and debris marked the graves of nearly 3,000 of his ships. The belt was still full of hidden enemies, and he knew they would attack again if he tried to retreat. But ahead lay Earth, and Vorth was determined to make the humans pay for this humiliation. He had no way of knowing that the asteroid belt had been just the first layer of Earth's defenses. The real surprises were still waiting for him. Admiral Vorth stared at the tactical display showing his remaining fleet. 7,000 ships were still a massive force, but the loss of nearly 3,000 vessels in the asteroid belt had shaken him badly. These humans fought nothing like the intelligence reports had suggested. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors show the main human fleet moving to intercept us near the third planet." Vorth studied the readings. Finally, a proper battle. The humans had approximately 500 ships in their main fleet. Even with his losses, he still outnumbered them 14-1. This time he would crush them in open space where their tricks would not work. "Signal the fleet," Vorth commanded. "Battle formation Alpha. We will show these humans how a real space battle is fought." Commander Shin Dong-woo received the signal aboard his heavy cruiser Retribution. He was leading the human battle line, knowing full well that his ships were outgunned and outnumbered. But Earth's plan did not depend on winning a fair fight. All ships, this is Retribution, Shin broadcast to his fleet. Remember the plan. We are not here to win. We are here to buy time and make them pay for every meter they advance. Dr. Lim Sang-ho was aboard the science vessel Discovery, hanging back behind the main battle line. His job was not to fight but to study the enemy. For months he had been analyzing captured Corvani technology, looking for weaknesses. "Captain," he called to the ship's commander. "I need to get close enough to scan their flagship. The bio readings I am detecting might be important." Sergeant First Class Jung Eunbi was preparing her Marine boarding teams aboard the assault ship Hammer. Her mission was one of the most dangerous in the fleet. While the big ships fought, her teams would try to capture enemy vessels from the inside. "Listen up, Marines," Jung addressed her troops. "We know the Corvani are bigger and stronger than us. But we have something they do not. We have been training for close combat since we were children. They have been sitting comfortable in their big ships for too long." The two fleets met in the space between Mars and Earth. The Corvani opened fire first, their massive energy weapons reaching across thousands of kilometers. The first human ships to die were destroyers that simply vanished under the concentrated fire of Corvani dreadnoughts. But the humans did not try to match the aliens shot for shot. Instead, they scattered into small groups and attacked from all directions at once. Human ships were smaller and faster. They could not survive a direct hit from Corvani weapons, but they were much harder to target. Commander Shin led the first attack run personally. His cruiser Retribution accelerated toward the enemy flagship at maximum speed, firing everything it had. The Corvani shields absorbed most of the damage, but Shin was not trying to destroy the big ship. He was trying to get it to focus on him. "All fighters, this is Retribution," Shin broadcast. "Primary target is distracted. Execute boarding protocol." Young's assault ship Hammer was hidden inside a cloud of debris from a destroyed human destroyer. When the Corvani flagship's attention was focused on Retribution, Hammer darted forward at high speed. "Boarding pods away," Young shouted. Around her, 20 small pods shot toward the enemy ship like bullets. Each pod carried 4 Marines armed with weapons designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. The pods punched through the Corvani ship's hull in different locations. Jung's pod cut through the armor near what her intelligence suggested was a weapon control center. "Move, move, move," Jung yelled as her pod doors blew open. She and her 3 Marines rushed into the alien ship, weapons ready. The Corvani crew were not prepared for boarders. Their ship was supposed to be invulnerable. When armed humans suddenly appeared in their corridors, many of them panicked. Jung's team fought their way toward the weapon control center. The Corvani were larger and stronger, but they had grown soft during centuries of easy victories. The humans were smaller but faster, and they fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. "Control center secured," Jung reported after a brief but violent firefight, beginning sabotage procedures. While Jung's Marines caused chaos inside enemy ships, Dr. Lim was making an important discovery. His scans of the Corvani fleet were showing something unexpected. "Captain," he called excitedly, "I am reading biological implants in the Corvani crew members, neural interfaces connected to their ship systems. This could be significant." "Significant how?" the captain asked. "If we could disrupt those implants, it might affect their ability to operate their ships effectively." Dr. Lim immediately sent his findings to Dr. Kim Jae-sung, who was monitoring the battle from his hidden laboratory. Kim had been looking for exactly this kind of weakness. The space battle continued to rage. Human ships died in flames, but they took Corvani vessels with them. Every human captain knew that retreat was not an option. Behind them was Earth, their families, their entire civilization. Captain Park So-min was leading her fighter squadron in desperate attacks against Corvani cruisers. Her experimental weapons were proving effective, but the enemy had adapted to her tactics. "All fighters, this is Park," she broadcast. "New orders from Admiral Lee. We are switching to kamikaze protocols." The young pilots around her went silent for a moment. They all knew what that meant. When their ships were too damaged to continue fighting, they would ram enemy vessels at maximum speed. "It was a one-way mission, but it might save Earth." "I understand." "Captain," came the reply from Lieutenant Kim Bora, For Earth. For Earth, Park replied. One by one, damaged human fighters began ramming attacks against Corvani ships. The aliens were horrified. In their culture, surrender was acceptable when defeat was certain. But these humans seemed to prefer death to defeat. Admiral Vorth watched his fleet's casualties mount with growing alarm. Yes, he was winning. The human fleet was being destroyed, but he was losing ships at a rate he had never experienced before. At this pace, he would reach Earth with barely half his original force. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We are receiving strange signals from several of our ships. Their crews report equipment malfunctions and navigation errors." Vorth frowned. "What kind of malfunctions?" "Neural interface disruptions, sir. Some crews are reporting severe headaches and disorientation." Dr. Kim's first test of his neural disruption technology was working. The signal he was broadcasting was interfering with the Corvani bioimplants, causing confusion and equipment failures throughout their fleet. Young and her Marines were still fighting inside the enemy flagship. They had managed to disable several weapon systems and were now working their way toward the ship's engine room. "Sergeant," one of her Marines reported, "I am seeing something strange. The aliens seem confused. Some of them are not fighting back effectively." Jung had noticed the same thing. The Corvani soldiers were moving slowly, making tactical errors they would not normally make. Something was affecting their ability to think clearly. "Whatever it is, take advantage of it," Jung ordered. "Move toward the main reactor. If we can disable their power core, this ship is finished." The battle reached its climax when Commander Shin's cruiser Retribution, badly damaged and losing life support, made a final ramming attack against a Corvani battleship. The collision destroyed both ships in a massive explosion that lit up the space between the fleets. But Shin's sacrifice allowed Young's Marines to complete their mission. The enemy flagship's reactor went critical, and the massive dreadnought broke apart in a series of explosions that took 3 nearby Corvani cruisers with it. Admiral Vorth found himself transferred to another ship, his flagship destroyed. Around him, his fleet was in chaos. The neural disruption signals were getting stronger and many of his crews could barely function. "Signal retreat," he finally ordered. "Fall back to the 4th planet and regroup." As the surviving Corvani ships withdrew, Admiral Lee received the casualty reports. The human fleet had been almost completely destroyed, but they had taken nearly 3,000 more enemy ships with them. "Sir," Park So-min reported from her damaged fighter, "enemy fleet strength now estimated at 4,000 ships. They are retreating to Mars orbit." Lee nodded grimly. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. Still, Earth's final defenses were waiting. The Corvani did not know it yet, but their worst nightmare was still ahead of them. Admiral Vorth's remaining fleet gathered near Mars, trying to understand what had gone wrong. Of his original armada of nearly 10,000 ships, fewer than 4,000 remained. The humans had fought like nothing he had ever encountered before. "Status report," Vorth demanded from his new flagship. "Fleet combat effectiveness is down 60%. Admiral," his aide reported with a trembling voice, "many ships report continued equipment failures. Crews are experiencing severe neural disruption." Vorth slammed his fist on the command console. The neural interference was getting worse, not better. His crews could barely operate their ships properly. But retreat was impossible. The Corvani Empire would execute him if he returned in defeat. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "We advance on Earth. Whatever tricks the humans have left, we will overcome them." What Vorth did not know was that Dr. Kim Jae-sung was preparing to activate the final phase of Project Prometheus. Hidden throughout the solar system, powerful transmitters were warming up to broadcast a signal that would turn the Corvani's own technology against them. "Computer, begin Prometheus' final protocol," Kim commanded from his laboratory deep inside Ceres. "Authorization code 77 Alpha." Captain Beck Ji-won received the activation signal aboard her stealth ship Ghostwalker. For 3 years, she had been hiding in the outer system with Admiral Hong Soo-jin's reserve fleet. Now it was time to strike. "All ships, this is Ghostwalker," Beck transmitted on a secure channel. "Execute Silent Thunder protocol. We are going hunting." The reserve fleet had been Earth's most closely guarded secret. While the Corvani focused on the obvious defenses, 50 of humanity's most advanced warships had been waiting in the cold dark beyond Neptune. These ships were built using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels, making them far more powerful than anything the enemy had seen. Admiral Hong Soo-jin commanded the reserve fleet from her flagship Nemesis. She had been watching the battle reports with growing anger. The Corvani had killed millions of humans already. Now it was time for revenge. All ships, battle formation Gamma, Hong ordered. We hit them from behind while they are focused on Earth. Show no mercy. Technician Kang Yanwu was aboard the electronic warfare ship Disruptor, preparing to activate the most dangerous weapon in Earth's arsenal. His neural disruption technology had been tested in small doses during the previous battles. Now he was ready to broadcast at full power. Dr. Kim, this is Disruptor, Kang reported. All transmitters are online and ready. Warning, full power broadcast will affect all Corvani bio-implants within the solar system. Do it, came Kim's reply. Authorization confirmed. Save our species, Kang. As the Corvani fleet began its final approach to Earth, the planet itself seemed to come alive with defensive fire. Orbital platforms that had been hidden on the dark side of the moon emerged and began targeting the approaching ships. Weapon satellites that had looked like space debris suddenly activated their particle beam cannons. But the real surprise came when Kang activated his neural disruptor at full power. The effect on the Corvani fleet was immediate and devastating. Throughout their ships, bio-implants that had been augmenting their crews for generations suddenly turned into weapons against them. Navigation systems failed. Weapon targeting computers shut down. Life support systems began operating randomly. Admiral, a panicked voice called over the communications system. Our crews are collapsing. The neural interfaces are overloading. Vorth felt it too. A splitting headache that made it hard to think clearly. Around him, his bridge crew was struggling to operate their stations. Some were unconscious. Others were crying out in pain. Maintain formation, Vorth shouted, fighting through the agony in his skull. We are almost at their planet. That was when Captain Bayek struck from the shadows. Ghost Walker had been designed to be completely invisible to enemy sensors. Beck had brought her ship to within a few hundred meters of the Corvani flagship before activating her weapons. This is for my brother, Beck whispered as she fired everything her ship had at point-blank range. Her brother had been killed in the first Corvani attack on a human colony 20 years ago. The enemy flagship exploded without warning. Admiral Vorth died never knowing what had hit him. With their command ship destroyed and their crews incapacitated by neural disruption, the Corvani fleet began to fall apart. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. Others simply drifted helplessly as their crews collapsed at their stations. Admiral Hong's reserve fleet appeared from the outer darkness like avenging angels. These fresh ships, crewed by humanity's best pilots, tore into the confused and helpless Corvani vessels. Target their engines first, Hong commanded. Disable them, then destroy them. No survivors. Captain Park So-min, flying one of the last surviving Talon 7 fighters, led a final attack against the Corvani troop transports. These ships carried the ground forces meant to occupy Earth after the space battle was won. All fighters, concentrate on the transports, Park ordered. Do not let them reach the surface. The neural disruptor was having an unexpected effect on some Corvani ships. Without proper control, their reactors began to overload. Explosions rippled through the enemy fleet as ship after ship destroyed itself. Dr. Kim watched the tactical display from his hidden laboratory. The Corvani fleet was disintegrating before his eyes. Project Prometheus had worked even better than he had hoped. Computer, record this moment, he said quietly. Let history remember that when humanity was threatened with extinction, we did not just survive. We showed the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth. Technician Kang was monitoring the neural disruptor effects carefully. The technology was dangerous even to humans, but so far his crews were protected by special shielding. Dr. Kim, Kang reported, enemy fleet cohesion has collapsed completely. Remaining ships are either dead in space or attempting to flee the system. How many? Kim asked. Difficult to count with all the debris, but estimated surviving enemy ships number fewer than 500. Most are damaged and fleeing at maximum speed. Captain Beck continued her hunt through the wreckage of the enemy fleet. Her stealth ship was perfectly suited for picking off damaged Corvani vessels trying to escape. Ghost Walker to all units, she broadcast. I have visual on enemy ships attempting to reach the jump point. Requesting permission to pursue. Negative, Ghost Walker, came Admiral Lee's voice from Earth Defense Command. Let some of them escape. They need to tell their empire what happened here. Admiral Hong's reserve fleet was mopping up the last organized resistance. The few Corvani ships still capable of fighting were hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. "This is Admiral Hong to all enemy vessels," she broadcast on an open channel. "Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." Most of the surviving Corvani ships were already running for the system's edge. Their crews, though still conscious, wanted nothing more than to escape this nightmare. Dr. Lim Sang-ho was collecting data from the battlefield aboard his science vessel. The effectiveness of the neural disruptor had exceeded all expectations. "Fascinating," he murmured as he studied the readings. The Corvani dependence on bioimplants made them incredibly vulnerable. This technology could revolutionize space warfare. As the last Corvani ships fled toward the jump point, Admiral Lee stood in Earth Defense Command watching his planet's skies clear of enemies. The cost had been terrible. Most of Earth's defensive fleet was destroyed. Thousands of brave men and women had died, but they had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had not just survived, but achieved a crushing victory. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported from her station, "final count shows approximately 200 enemy ships escaping the system. The rest are destroyed or disabled." Lee nodded. 200 survivors out of nearly 10,000. It would be a story that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Captain Roth was one of the few Corvani officers still conscious when his damaged cruiser limped toward the jump point. Around him, the bridge crew lay unconscious or dead from neural overload. He had to fly the ship manually, something no Corvani had done in centuries. Behind him, the Sol system burned with the wreckage of the mightiest fleet the Corvani Empire had ever assembled. Of the 9,900 ships that had entered this system with such confidence, fewer than 200 were escaping. Most of those were barely functional. Personal log, Captain Roth, he spoke to his ship's recorder. Date, Empire Standard 2387.156. I am likely the highest-ranking survivor of the Sol system disaster. What we encountered here was not the primitive human resistance we expected. It was a carefully planned trap 50 years in the making. Roth looked back at the burning debris field that had once been Admiral Vorth's armada. The humans had used every advantage they could think of. Hidden bases, suicide attacks, neural warfare, and weapons that turned the Corvani's own technology against them. The humans did not fight like any civilized species, Roth continued his log. They fought like cornered animals. When they ran out of weapons, they used their ships as weapons. When their ships were destroyed, they used themselves as weapons. I have never seen such desperate fury. The few other surviving Corvani ships were reporting similar damage and casualties. Most had lost over half their crews to neural disruption. Others had been so badly damaged that they would never fight again. Emperor Vash received the first reports 3 days later in his palace on the Corvani homeworld. At first, he refused to believe them. The Sol expedition had been the largest military operation in Empire history. It was supposed to crush human resistance in a matter of days. "You are telling me," the Emperor said slowly, "that nearly 10,000 ships were destroyed by 300 human vessels?" The messenger, a young communications officer who had survived aboard one of the fleeing ships, trembled as he delivered his report. "Not just 300 ships, Your Majesty," the officer said. "The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Hidden bases in asteroids, suicide fighters, neural disruption technology that made our crews helpless." Emperor Vash felt a cold fear growing in his chest. If the reports were true, the Empire had not just lost a fleet. They had lost their reputation of invincibility. "How many ships returned?" he asked. 187, Your Majesty. Most are heavily damaged. Total crew casualties are estimated at over 90%. The Emperor dismissed the messenger and called for his military advisors. If word of this disaster spread, the Empire's subject species might revolt. Worse, other enemies might see weakness and attack. Back in the Sol system, President Lee Hyo-rim stood in the ruins of Earth Defense Command. The facility had taken a direct hit during the final battle, but the planet had survived. Around her, rescue teams were searching for survivors in the wreckage. "Casualty report," she asked Admiral Lee, who had survived the battle but was heavily bandaged. "Military casualties are approximately 80%. Lee replied grimly. "Most of our defensive fleet is gone. The orbital platforms are destroyed. But Earth still stands." President Lee looked out at the debris field that filled Earth's orbit. Twisted metal from both human and alien ships drifted like a mechanical graveyard around the planet. What about their survivors? She asked. We have captured approximately 50 damaged Corvani ships. The crews are dead or unconscious from neural disruption. Dr. Kim says the effect should wear off in a few days. Dr. Kim Jae-sung was in his laboratory, analyzing the battle data. Project Prometheus had worked beyond his wildest expectations. The neural disruption technology had turned the Corvani's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Computer final analysis, he commanded. Display effectiveness rating for all defensive systems. The results showed that conventional weapons had destroyed about 30% of the enemy fleet. The hidden asteroid bases had accounted for another 30%, but the neural disruptor had been responsible for 40% of enemy losses. Fascinating, Kim murmured. We did not defeat them with superior technology. We defeated them by understanding their weaknesses better than they understood them themselves. Dr. Lim Sang-ho was examining captured Corvani bio-implants in his laboratory. What he was finding would change everything humanity thought they knew about their enemies. The implants are not just enhancement devices, he reported to Dr. Kim. They are control systems. The Corvani Empire uses them to maintain discipline and loyalty among their crews, but that also made them incredibly vulnerable to neural disruption. 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Roth finally reached Corvani space. His ship was one of only 150 that had made it home. The others had broken down or been destroyed by their own malfunctioning systems during the long journey. The report he delivered to Emperor Vash changed everything. Within days, word of the disaster had spread throughout the Empire. Subject worlds that had been conquered generations ago began to rebel. Enemy species that had been afraid of Corvani power started making aggressive moves. The humans have shown the galaxy that we can be defeated, Emperor Vash told his council. This single battle may have destroyed our empire. Back on Earth, President Lee was making a different kind of decision. The planet's defenses were in ruins, but they had captured massive amounts of Corvani technology. More importantly, they had proven that humanity could not be easily conquered. Dr. Kim, she said during a private meeting, how quickly can we rebuild our defenses using captured alien technology? With what we have learned, we could have a fleet twice as powerful as before within 5 years, Kim replied. But I recommend we focus on something else first. What do you mean? The neural disruptor technology, Kim explained. It does not just work on the Corvani. Our analysis suggests it could affect any species that uses bio-neural implants. And according to our intelligence, most advanced species in the galaxy use similar technology. President Lee understood immediately. Humanity had not just defended Earth. They had discovered a weapon that could potentially defeat any technologically advanced enemy. We will share this information with our allies, she decided. The galaxy needs to know that there is a way to resist oppression. Within months, the neural disruption technology had spread to dozens of worlds. Species that had been enslaved by various empires suddenly found themselves able to fight back effectively. The balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. The Corvani Empire collapsed within 2 years. Without their reputation of invincibility, they could not control their vast territories. Many of their former subjects adopted human-developed neural shielding technology to protect themselves from future oppression. Admiral Lee, now recovered from his injuries, stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital defense station. It was built using a combination of human engineering and captured alien technology. Around him, the wreckage of the great battle had been cleared away, but everyone remembered what had happened here. Sir, Captain Park Somin said as she joined him. She had been promoted to Admiral after her heroic service during the battle. Long-range sensors are detecting another alien fleet approaching the outer system. Lee smiled. How many ships? Only 50, sir. They are broadcasting friendship signals. Apparently they want to establish diplomatic relations with the species that defeated the Corvani Empire. Lee nodded. This was happening more and more often. Species from across the galaxy were coming to Earth not to conquer but to learn. They wanted to understand how a small, primitive world had defeated the mightiest empire in known space. Signal them that they are welcome, Lee said, but remind them that they are entering the system where 900 ships came to attack Earth, and only a few returned alive. We hope they come in peace, but if they do not, they will learn the same lesson the Corvani learned. The message that went out to the approaching fleet was simple but clear. Earth welcomes friends, but destroys enemies. Choose wisely. Dr. Kim's final report on Project Prometheus became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. His conclusion was simple. The key to defeating a superior enemy is not to fight them on their terms, but to understand their weaknesses and use those weaknesses against them. The battle for Earth had lasted only a few days, but its effects would be felt for centuries. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as a species that would fight with desperate ingenuity when threatened. It was a lesson that would not be forgotten. In the end, the Corvani had been right about one thing. Humans were dangerous. But they had been wrong about why. Humans were not dangerous because they were primitive and savage. They were dangerous because, when faced with extinction, they refused to give up, and they were smart enough to turn their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. The few Corvani who had returned alive carried more than news of defeat. They carried a warning that would echo through the stars. Do not threaten Earth unless you are prepared to face the consequences. Because humans, when cornered, do not just fight back. They fight to win no matter the cost.